I'm Mangino. Welcome to the Mangino Talks podcast. We talk about everything that matters to Pittsburgh, from current events to Pittsburgh history, social issues to sports, politics, to practical day-to-day life. And today, Mangino talks about hate in Pittsburgh. We all know about the trial taking place against Robert Bowers, whose own defense readily admits that, yes, he horribly murdered 11 people who were worshiping God. And they're not even going to try to dispute any of that. And we're also dealing with an increased level of hate around the country and right here in the Pittsburgh region. In fact, some of those demonstrations of hate occurring just a couple of weeks before the trial was to begin and as the trial is currently taking place. Joining us to discuss this today, Kelly Fishman, Anti-Defamation League Interim Regional Director and Education Director serving Ohio, Kentucky, West Virginia, and Western Pennsylvania. And we also have the Regional Board Chair for the Anti-Defamation League in the same region, Steve Irwin, both joining us today. Kelly, Steve, welcome to Mangino Talks.
Thanks for having us, Robert.
Well, thank you very
Great
much
to be here.
For being a part of all of this. It means a lot to me. This issue is one that is just so disturbing to so many to think that, one, the horrors that happened at Tree of Life a little over 4 years ago could even take place. And then with all of that being known, that we have an increased level of hate that is occurring all over the country. And Pittsburgh is no exception. In fact, in some ways, a part of the lead on this. Kelly, what are you seeing when it comes to demonstrations of anti-Semitism and just general hate-filled communications throughout this region?
Sure. So we do, at the ADL, we do an audit of anti-Semitic incidents every year. And in 2022, we saw a 36% increase from 2021 in anti-Semitic incidents. But in our region, we saw a 37% increase. So we're really seeing an increase in the flyering, which is what we were seeing happening in Squirrel Hill, vandalism and harassment for people of Jewish identity. And it's really alarming because we're seeing it in public spaces, we're seeing it in K-12 schools, we're seeing it on college campuses. And so it doesn't seem that anyone is immune from this anti-Semitism right now.
Steve, you live in Pittsburgh, and I'm interested in getting your thoughts about something. You are obviously aware of the tremendous level of hate that resides in pockets within this region. And then you've also been able to experience the tremendous outpouring of love that the entire region demonstrated and continues to demonstrate in light of the horrors of the massacre at Tree of Life. Help us with how you take all of this in and your perspective on it all.
Sure. Even though I'm chair of the region, which includes the 4 states, as you point out, I do live in Squirrel Hill, and I was for many years a member of the Tree of Life congregation, which is where the 3 congregations that were affected by the murders resided. And it's we have one of the great Jewish communities in America here in Pittsburgh, in the city of Pittsburgh, and particularly in Squirrel Hill. So we're a target because you have a lot of Jews in one place, some visible, some not. And so when you have an opportunity for extremists to try to inspire fear and put fear in the hearts of folks and discourage them from expressing themselves and their beliefs and their rituals and otherwise, Squirrel Hill's a good place to do that. And of course, now with the trial, the world's looking at us here. So it's not surprising that we would see the kind of leafleting and other little postings there to make people feel uncomfortable and to bring back the horrible memories of 10/27.
Kelly, when people see these stickers, these flyers, these postings online, obviously they're meant to strike fear and intimidation within the Jewish community. They're also used as a recruiting tool to find others who may be like-minded and then bring them onto this extremist mindset as well. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think the first, as you said, the first target is to make people feel uncomfortable and scared and to exert a sense of power over others. But we're also seeing white supremacists and extremists use a lot of different tactics to try to recruit others to their cause. So things like flyering. We have a report from our Center on Technology and Society about how online gaming is used to recruit young people over to white supremacist and extremist groups. So there, unfortunately, are a lot of different avenues that are being used. And so when you see this in multiple different formats, it reinforces this hateful message.
The comments throughout the Pittsburgh region, Steve, these stickers, 15 of them or so that were distributed in areas like Oakland and Shenley Park, Beechwood Boulevard, Whitman Park, and the level of distribution and the targeted area. One of the things that was noted was from Shawn Brokos. He's the director of community security for the Jewish Federation of Greater Pittsburgh, is that there are people who are outside of the Jewish community that are alerting authorities to incidents like this. Your thoughts on these incidents and the role that those who are wanting to be supporters and have great love for the Jewish community here in Pittsburgh, what they're doing to help?
Sure. First of all, Shawn, she is leading the security of the effort to keep us safe here in the Jewish community and certainly at all our institutions here, the Jewish institutions and others. And she works with even outside the Jewish community to take other marginalized or minority communities that might be targets to keep them safe as well. And one of the great things that came out of one of the good things that came out of this horrible Tree of Life event was the outpouring of support for the Jewish community from our neighbors in the Muslim community and in the Christian community and more. And that's what we're experiencing now, and that's what we'll continue to experience. People calling out when these kinds of things happen as being abhorrent, not acceptable. Just voicing support for the Jewish community and the victims and the families that are going through this trial. So it's Shawn was with the FBI for many years before she took on this role here and we have throughout the country people now installed in communities to do the same kind of thing, to make sure that our institutions are safe and protected, that people are doing all they can in the event something happens and to prevent things from happening. So they're constantly talking with each other and sharing information. Kelly can talk more about the incredible work that the ADL does to monitor, infiltrate these hate groups and know what they're up to, monitor them online, in their meetings, et cetera, and even going after them to try to remove the resources they have to do the kinds of activities that they're doing around the country.
Hey, Kelly, if you would talk about that.
Sure. So this is the part that really gives me a lot of hope. I know I've talked a lot about really the sadness and the hate that we're seeing, but I have so much hope with the work that we're doing at ADL. As I said, we have the Center for Technology and Society, and they are monitoring what is happening online, in chat rooms, in the video games our kids are playing, on social media, and they're working to help deplatform these white supremacists and extremist groups. And we're also working in coalition with other groups. So things like the Interfaith Alliance, we have, today's the first day of Pride Month, and the Interfaith Alliance is working on Faith for Pride, where we work to fight against an extremist minority who's working to really distort the meaning of religious freedom for the LGBTQ plus groups. So I think as we think about how white supremacy and extremism uses things like the Great Replacement theory to target Blacks, Jews, Latinos, LGBTQ plus groups, we are standing up and fighting in coalition with those groups to say, you know what, if no one can be treated equally, then we're going to stand together and fight against that. Because we feel like when anti-Semitism is really like the canary in the coal mine, right? Where when we see anti-Semitism, we also see the rise in hate against all of these other groups. And we have to stand in coalition and unity. And that's what we're seeing happen, where we'll get reports to the ADL because you can use our instant reporting system to report things like the stickers and the flyers. And what happens is that then those people report and say, hey, I took down this many stickers. So I know one person reported they took down 15 stickers in Squirrel Hill. So we know people are taking this education and this understanding, and they're using it to fight back and say, not here, not in our community, and it doesn't matter how I identify, the people with me need to be supported.
Steve, I want to go back to something that you mentioned just a moment ago about the outpouring of support from the Islamic community, especially after the Tree of Life shooting that took place. Normally, we think on a global scale that the Jewish community and the Islamic community are at odds with one another. But is it accurate to say that in the United States, the greatest threat to the Jewish community is not from those that would be in Islam, but they are those that would claim some perversion of a Christianity in their white extremist mindset?
Wow, that's a tough question. I don't think that the Muslim people as a whole are a great threat to the Jewish people in the United States, and there are many Christians and others who are great supporters and lovers of Israel and the Jewish people. It's where we see, and I'd ask Kelly to chime in here, but where we see these horrible events from across the country, from Pittsburgh to Poway to Christchurch to El Paso. These are people who are in their own worlds and in an online world where they're reading incredible propaganda, doing online gaming things that give them crazy thoughts about how to act out in ways that are just horrific. And there's so many things we can do to try to make these things less likely across the board, to confront it as a systemic thing within any one particular group of people, I think would be short-sighted. What do you think, Kelly?
Yeah, I would agree. I think that what happens is that we see extremist groups really work to divide people. So if you're Muslim, you can't get along with someone who's Jewish. If you're LGBTQ plus, you can't get along with someone who's straight, or if you're, like your race. So I think we're seeing these groups really try to divide people. Mm-hmm. And I think the groups are starting to understand that, and they're saying, you know what, nobody wants to be targeted, because we see neighbors working with neighbors, regardless of race or gender identity or sexual orientation or religion, and they're supporting each other. And so I think that it's this small group that is working to try to amplify what they're doing to make it seem like they're bigger than they are. But I think that there are more of us. I think that there are more people that want to see a fight against anti-Semitism and racism and homophobia and transphobia and xenophobia. So I think that we're seeing people really come together and understand, you know what, there are more of us, and that we can stand together. But we have to continue to do that. And when we see people working together, like Steve said, when after the three synagogues were really impacted by the massacre at Tree of Life, all the different religious communities came together and supported those groups, supported those synagogues. And so I think that it's important to see, it's kind of like Mr. Rogers said, let's focus on the helpers. Who are the people that are out there doing the good work? Because I think there are a lot of them. And so I think we have to continue to amplify those voices and make those voices louder than this extremists and the white supremacists.
Are there special vulnerabilities that teens have to this hate speech?
I mean, I can't speak to the psychology behind what teenagers are going through, but I did teach high school for over a decade. And I will say that there's this interesting confluence of COVID and social media and technology that puts them in an interesting place that the rest of us as adults never would have experienced. And so I think that we're seeing them, there are more platforms for them, right? It's not better or worse, there are just more platforms. And so COVID created a lot of isolation for people. And so we saw kids get more involved in online gaming worlds, or even just FaceTiming with a friend rather than having an in-person conversation. And so I could imagine that would have an impact on how they feel in terms of their isolation and their mental health. We know there's an increase in mental health issues for teens. And so when we see students that are already vulnerable, who then continue to isolate themselves and then are being targeted by white supremacists and extremists, I think that we could potentially see the harm that can be caused. So I think that it's important for parents to understand, what are the impacts of gaming? I'm not saying you don't let your kids game, but what are the conversations you're having around that? We have, like I said, we have great reports from our Center on Technology and Society that really highlight those things for parents in a way that's easy to digest and understand. And we have we have something called table talks, where you can have these conversations with your kids around the dinner table. So how do we have conversations about extremists or when hate is happening online? How do I stand up? How do I report that? So I think that's really important for parents and guardians to understand.
Steve, what do you see as some of the greatest challenges that we face as a community, as a region, in combating hate?
Well, it's a great question. Certainly the things that we need to do is we have these institutions that are very vulnerable, organized religion, because people are afraid to go into their synagogues and churches and commune with others and learn the kinds of things that develop a moral fiber that they, historically have done in those settings. They're afraid to go because they're afraid of violence in those settings. That's something that we have to fight. And certainly more and more support from the federal government has come to try to give these institutions the resources they need to stay safe. And then, of course, the conversations with local law enforcement. It's really something that has to happen at every level of government and in every sphere, not only in our schools, in our synagogues, in our churches, et cetera, but in our community institutions, but in our schools and in our workplaces. And ADL does a ton of great work in developing really the really best materials for teaching No Place for Hate in schools and for helping workplaces, become environments that are really friendly to people from all backgrounds.
Kelly, are the people who are passing out hate-filled flyers, stickers, posting online today, is there a direct line to where people can go from doing that to committing the atrocities that took place at Tree of Life? Are all of these individuals that are engaged in this right now at severe risk of committing crimes as horrible as that was? And should people who are listening right now to this examine their families, their friends, and take it seriously, what they're doing, what they're posting, what they're engaging in, because they too could be a part of something as tragic as that incident 4 years ago?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't want to say that everyone, right? I don't want to overgeneralize that everyone who's flyering is going to become a Robert Bowers. But I do think it's important to understand how our biased attitudes build up to bias-motivated violence. So we have this great graphic called the Pyramid of Hate. You just Google Pyramid of Hate, it'll come up. The ADL should be the first thing that comes up. And you can really see how at the bottom we have those biased attitudes. And look, we all have them. Everyone has implicit biases that we don't even understand we have. So how can I check myself, right? We always have to start with ourselves. How do I check myself? Why do I believe these things? When I share something online, just because like my mom or my aunt or my uncle or somebody shared it, just because I know that person, am I checking to make sure that that's a fact? So am I just sharing something because it's what I've always believed, and why do I believe those things? So making sure we're checking our own biases, which is hard, and it does take a lot of work, making sure we're understanding those, because when we leave our biased attitudes unchecked, that's when we move into acts of bias. Things that are as simple as bullying or name calling. If you're hearing that you have a child that's bullying or name calling at school, that's something to really take seriously, because where are those beliefs coming from? And then when those go unchecked, that's when we move into different types of discrimination, and then bias-motivated violence. And so really making sure we're checking attitudes. When somebody says something and they're like, oh, I'm just joking, right? There's always some truth when somebody says something, maybe makes a joke that's anti-Semitic or racist or misogynistic. Are we checking them? Are we saying, why did you say that? Or, can you tell me more about that idea? We need to call people out so that we can have conversations about, that could be really hurtful to someone. And I know you think that you're just joking, but just because you're joking doesn't mean it didn't cause harm to someone else.
Right.
And so again, we have a lesson called When Just Joking Isn't a Joke. It's great for schools. It's great for parents. And it gives you tips to understand, like, I get nervous, right? I don't want to call out my friend or my grandma because she's 90, right? How do we have those conversations with love and understanding? Because if we just combat hate with hate, we're going to get more hate. So how do we question it, call it out, and work to educate so that we can combat hate with love and understanding?
According to recent reports from the Anti-Defamation League, in Pennsylvania alone, 114 incidents occurred, the highest ever reported, and a 63% increase compared to 2021. And I'm wondering to what extent the Jewish American Heritage Month and the U.S. House marking that with a unanimous approval of a resolution condemning anti-Semitism and recognizing American Jews, can that be a positive here? That's a part of pushing back against this hate that we have, Steve, that when we talk about the amazing positive contributions that Jewish Americans have made to not only this country and in multitude of levels, from the serving in the military and helping to keep this nation a free and independent country, the life-saving attributes that have come with the medical research and discoveries and treatments. Can these kinds of things, these teachings, a month like this month, be a potential difference maker?
Yeah, no, it's a really wonderful development that the Congress in the United States has instituted Jewish American Heritage Month, and the kinds of things that you just listed for us are just many of the great contributions that Jewish people have brought to the to North America since first coming here in the 1600s, and it's important to recognize everyone's contributions and the pain that many groups have experienced. But you got to focus and see their history of anti-Semitism that predated the Holocaust and predated Jews coming to this country. I mean, certainly that is a great thing, and certainly in Jewish American Heritage Month, we noted that the president announced this month the first U.S. national strategy to counter anti-Semitism, which he announced at the White House, and this is something that ADL was deeply involved in helping to fashion a plan, a strategy for countering and ending the normalization of anti-Semitism, and the kinds of very practical and tangible steps that this plan proposes that we do is really the kind of activity that'll bring communities together, make it less likely that we have the kinds of horrible incidents that we've been experiencing, because it's very real. As you point out, anti-Semitism has increased. Anti-Semitic acts of violence, harassment, vandalism have increased to almost more than 3,600 last year nationwide. And it's a 36% increase over 2021. And in each of the last 5 years, that number's gotten higher and higher. So this is a real problem. And so it's things like this where we appreciate each other, our contributions to our society, et cetera, and respect that, acknowledge it, celebrate it. When we understand who we are and each other, it makes it much likely that we're going to fear or engage in acts of hate against the Jewish people.
I want to give you both an opportunity to have final thoughts on this subject, and I want to start with you, Kelly. We've talked about quite a bit so far, but I want to make sure that you have a chance to be able to get out the clear message that you were hoping you would be able to get out in this broadcast.
Sure. I think that the message that we want to share is that any kind of hate, anti-Semitism, racism, misogyny, xenophobia, transphobia, homophobia, doesn't have a place here. And we are seeing people stand up and fight against that. So we have the resources and the tools for you. If you go to adl.org, you can find everything you need. You are not in this fight alone. And we are here to support you. And we're so thrilled to see the White House come out with the strategy to specifically fight anti-Semitism, because as I said, when anti-Semitism is the canary in the coal mine and we see other types of hate follow, let's stop it at its roots. And we're here to support everyone willing to do that.
Thank you. Steve, your final thoughts?
These next few months are going to be really tough. And Robert, we are just really so grateful for your giving us this opportunity to speak to our community and let them know that ADL is here. When you see something, call ADL. We have the resources and the expertise to respond. And we work well with all aspects of government and the community to make sure that we never have another horrific event as we experienced here. The most horrible anti-Semitic assault that this country's ever seen. Yes. I think we have to stand together over these next months. This is a trial that is going to be very painful for many people, and as a community, we have to stand together and say that Pittsburgh again can be an example, a shining example of creating community dialogues, not only within the Jewish community but beyond to all other segments of our community, because again, learning those skills of tolerance, of engagement, of appreciation, of honoring our differences, and are the things that apply to every aspect of our community, and it really is what will make Pittsburgh just a wonderful place to live for generations to come.
Now, I want both of you to know that as long as I have an ability to speak into a microphone, then I'm going to champion your cause to be able to do what every American ought to be able to do: live peaceably, without fear of attack, without fear of death, without the fear of being harassed and treated horribly in society. Just to be able to live comfortably and peaceably in a welcoming community, and I want to do all I can to be able to help accomplish that. And like I said, you guys are always welcome to come on my podcast, and I thank you very much for your time. Steve Irwin, ADL Regional Board Chair, living here in Pittsburgh. Also joining us, Kelly Fishman, Anti-Defamation League Interim Regional Director and Education Director, serving Ohio, Kentucky, West Virginia, and Western Pennsylvania. Kelly, Steve, thank you both for your time.
Thanks, Robert. Have a great day.
Thank you. And thank you for listening to the Mangino Talks podcast. New episodes drop Monday through Friday at 3 p.m. Eastern. For more on me and the show, be sure to visit manginotalks.com. Follow me on your favorite social media platform by using @Mangino Talks, or you can just Google Mangino Talks. Once you find me, please like, follow, subscribe, and share the pages with your friends and family. And thanks again for listening to the Mangino Talks podcast.